I found the game in my grandfather's attic, buried under old coats and war medals, dusty, wrapped in rotting cloth, and locked in a wooden box that smelled like damp earth. It wasn't labeled, but once I unwrapped it, the name was carved deep into the board in jagged letters: Escape, a game of fate. The box was heavy, heavier than it should have been, and inside, a folded board, yellowed cards, tiny pewter figures, and a pair of dice that made my stomach churn, because they weren't plastic. They were bone white, slightly warmed to the touch, and dotted with what looked like brown stains. Each corner of the box was lined with old teeth, human teeth. I should have thrown it out right then, but curiosity has a way of sounding like a whisper, doesn't it? The rules were printed on a brittle scroll of paper in a strange reddish ink that looked like it had bled through the parchment. I thought it was a gimmick, some edgy horror game from the 70 seconds trying to be scary. The top line read, "Winner escapes, loser stays forever." I laughed it off. Of course I did. I was 24, living with my friend Liam after a bad breakup, and anything that could distract us from our mess of a life sounded like fun. That night, we invited 2 more friends over, Eliza and Nate, for beers and a throwback game night. We set up the board in the middle of the living room floor, surrounded by flickering candles. The lights had gone out, power cut from a storm rolling in. It was almost cinematic. One of us should have said, maybe this isn't a good idea. But none of us did. The first move went to Eliza. She rolled the bone dice with a smirk and moved her figurine forward. The second she did, her eyes widened. I saw something," she whispered. "What do you mean?" Nate asked, chuckling nervously. "In the fireplace. A flash of something, like a face." We brushed it off. Too much beer, we thought. But when Liam took his turn and rolled, the floor beneath him creaked like something shifted inside the wood. I hadn't even taken a turn yet, but already I felt like the room was shrinking. On my turn, I rolled the dice, and the second they landed, the lights flickered back on, just for a moment. And in that flicker, the room didn't look the same. The walls weren't painted beige anymore. They were peeling, dark, and wet-looking. The carpet was gone, replaced by rotting wood. The air smelled like old breath, and when I blinked, it was gone. Everything was back to normal, except the board was now different. It looked newer, cleaner, like it was feeding on us. That's when Liam noticed something written on the underside of the lid, faintly revealed by the candlelight. "The first to leave the game must take the loser's place." We laughed nervously, again, but something deep inside me, something ancient and instinctive, started to scream. We kept playing, because somehow stopping didn't feel like an option anymore. When Eliza rolled again, she pulled a card from the deck. She read it aloud: "Challenge, reveal your deepest fear, or let it happen." She hesitated, eyes wide. "Spiders," she said, voice shaking. "Big ones, hairy, crawling on my skin." The candle nearest her went out, and from the shadows by the windows, 8 legs began to stretch out, massive, furry, silent. We all screamed, scrambling back, but when the lights flickered again, it was gone. Or so we thought. Her arms were covered in fresh bite marks. Still, she stayed. We all did, frozen by a horrible feeling in our bones that this wasn't just a game anymore. It was something much, much older. And it had rules. Twisted rules. That night, we learned the dice didn't always roll the numbers we wanted. Sometimes they rolled what the game needed, and what it needed was someone who wouldn't make it out. We tried to stop playing. We really did. After the spider incident, Eliza wanted out. She stood, pale and shaking, muttering, "I'm done. I don't care what happens. This is insane." But the moment she took a step away from the board, her piece burst into flames. Not a little flicker, an explosion of fire that made us all scream. She backed up immediately, and the fire vanished, leaving behind nothing but a blackened scorch mark on the game board. Her token, melted and fused into the space she had last stood on. That was when we realized we couldn't leave, not unless we finished the game. And yet, no one wanted to win either, because the winner escapes and the loser stays forever. What did that even mean? Did they die, disappear, get swallowed by the game itself? We didn't know, but we were too far in to turn back. The next few rounds passed in a blur of dread. Every move was a risk. The dice didn't feel like dice anymore. They felt like loaded bullets in a cursed revolver. Nate rolled a double 6. The room went silent. Then his card read, "Time for a trade. Exchange a secret with the board, or give it blood." He laughed nervously. "Okay, fine. Secret it is." He leaned in close to the board and whispered something we couldn't hear. The room held its breath. Then something in the air shifted, like the game knew, and liked what it heard. But later, when the game made me draw a card, it said, "Truth must be shared, reveal what was traded, or lose your voice." I stared at Nate. He was frozen. I asked, "What did you say?" He shook his head. "I can't," and before I could press him, my throat tightened. My tongue went numb. I couldn't speak. My voice was gone. Just like that. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. Just dry air. The panic set in like a rising wave. Nate tried to apologize. Eliza was crying. Liam stared blankly into space like something had snapped inside him. When it was Liam's turn again, he rolled low. A single one. He picked a card with trembling fingers. A piece for a piece. Sacrifice what you cherish, or lose what you are. He didn't hesitate. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the silver locket that held his late sister's photo, and placed it gently on the board. The locket vanished instantly, swallowed by the board. The space Liam's piece landed on shifted color, from gray to black. He didn't say anything, but I noticed a strange fog settle around him, like part of him was already gone. We were being chipped away, bit by bit. The board wasn't just playing with us, it was feeding. We tried to cheat. We tried to skip turns, roll without touching the dice, fake moves, but the board knew. It always knew. Eliza tried rolling both dice into her sleeve to change the number. A second later, her card read, "Cheat once, pay double, move forward 10, or give us a finger." She froze. "That's not fair." The room answered. The lights blew out. The candles flickered wildly. A shriek echoed from inside the walls, long and hollow, like someone had been screaming for years. Eliza moved her token forward 10 spaces, crying. The space she landed on was black. The card read, "You've entered the gate." We didn't know what that meant, but the temperature dropped instantly. Frost formed on the window glass. She stood, shivering. Her eyes rolled back in her head. She whispered something so quiet I almost missed it. "They're calling from the other side." And then she slumped forward, not unconscious, not dead, just not there anymore. Her body sat in the room. But Eliza? She wasn't with us anymore. We screamed for her, shook her, nothing. Liam whispered, "She lost. She's the one who stays." I wanted to scream too, but I still had no voice. Nate rolled next. His hand shook so badly he dropped the dice. They landed with a soft click. One die showed a skull, the other, a blank. The board pulsed, actually pulsed, like a heartbeat under the wood. The lights dimmed, then flared bright red. Nate's card said, "Final duel. One must leave, one must remain. Choose your opponent." He looked at me, then at Liam. His lip trembled. He whispered, "Liam." The board rattled. The pewter pieces lifted into the air. Liam stood, dazed, his eyes hollow. He didn't protest. Their tokens moved by themselves to a circle on the board. Cards laid themselves out. The dice glowed. "Final test begins," the board said in a voice we could all hear, deep and cold and wrong. Nate and Liam sat, silent. I watched, trembling, as they prepared to play what the board called the final round. Eliza's body still sat slumped by the wall, her eyes open, empty. I wanted to run, but I couldn't even whisper for help. This wasn't a game anymore. It was a trap, and only one of them would make it out. The room was dead silent except for the sound of the dice clinking together. Nate and Liam stared across the board, no longer friends, just opponents in some dark ritual we never asked to join. The circle on the board where their tokens stood began to glow a faint red. The cards in front of them flipped one by one, dealt by invisible hands. They weren't normal cards anymore. They showed things no board game should ever show. Images of people we knew, places we'd been, and events we hadn't told anyone about. Personal sins, secrets, guilt printed in glossy ink. Liam drew first. His hand trembled, but he kept his eyes fixed on the card. He didn't flinch. "I accept it," he muttered, voice hollow. Nate drew next. His card was different. He turned it over and froze. "No," he whispered. "That's not true. I never—" His words faded. A voice, deep and ancient, echoed from the board. "The truth has no mercy. The board sees all." Then came the duel, a game within a game. The board called it the reckoning. 2 black dice appeared, one for each of them. The rules were spoken aloud in a language I didn't understand, but somehow I felt it. It wasn't about luck, it was about consequences. Liam rolled first. A 6. Nate closed his eyes and let the dice fall. They landed on a 1. The room went cold. The red light dimmed. The cards caught fire, slowly, silently. Liam stood. His face was blank, like a man who had just died and come back hollow. He turned to me. "I'm free," he said quietly. The board responded, "Winner escapes." I watched as the door, yes, the door we had long forgotten, creaked open behind him. Daylight spilled in, real daylight, warm and golden and alive. Liam didn't even look back. He stepped out and the door slammed shut behind him. And Nate gasped. His skin turned gray. His eyes faded like film left in the sun. His body didn't slump or fall. It just faded, crumbled into dust, sucked into the wood of the board. In front of me, the card that had been burning went out. The words still visible, now scorched black. "Loser stays forever." The game reset, just like that. The board was whole again. The cards shuffled themselves. The dice returned to their original state, white and clean. The human teeth gleamed once more. The box closed slowly, creaking like a coffin lid. I sat there, unable to move, my voice still lost, my mind spinning. Eliza still sat, lifeless. Nate was gone. Liam, who knows where he is now? I picked up the box with shaking hands. It was warm, still breathing. I didn't know what to do. Burn it? Bury it? Smash it? But something deep inside told me none of those would work. This thing couldn't be destroyed, only passed on. So, I locked it in the attic, wrapped in cloth, boxed in wood, buried beneath forgotten things. But sometimes, when the house is quiet, I still hear the dice rolling upstairs. And when I check my phone, I swear, sometimes there are 4 players online in the chat group, even though only I'm left. I can't throw it away. I should, but I can't. Because deep down, I know one day someone else will find it, and the board will be ready. The game always resets, the board always plays, and the winner escapes. But the loser always stays forever.